For everybody, I'm Joe George. I'm the middle school counselor at Walworth Barber American International School in Israel. And before here, I worked at the Anglo-American School of Moscow. And before that, I was a high school social studies teacher. And this YouTube channel that's linked right here is, I mean, shamelessly self-promoting, but it's my YouTube channel, and it's filled with resources, tutorials, interviews, and presentations that Felina and I have done.
Okay, and I'm Felina Hart. I'm at the American International School of Budapest. I'm the middle school counselor here and the safeguarding lead. This is my third year here. Before that, I was in Kiev, Ukraine for 5 years, and that's really where I started my solution-focused journey. And then before that, I was in Texas for a long time. So I would say with solution focus, it's one of those things that you have to keep practicing. You have to keep working with the mindset and make adaptations as you need to. It's nothing, I wouldn't say we're experts, but we've been playing around with it, and we've found different ways to utilize it within a school system. And so we're going to share some of that today.
And we do need some volunteers. So what we're hoping to do right now, we're going to be doing breakout rooms, and in those breakout rooms, there'll be 4 different roles. But since we're going to be recording this, we're hoping to get 4 people that are willing to stay in the main room so we can have some people recorded. It's for the presentation and people can see it. Could we get 4 volunteers? If so, please put your name in the chat. Excellent. Okay, we have 4.
All right. Great.
As Felina was saying, the overall premise of solution-focused brief therapy is hope. And if you can embrace these 2 rules, you can learn how to use it. The main one is you're a hope builder. Learn it, live it, love it, don't destroy it. And the way you destroy it is bringing up all the kid's failures. The kid knows what he or she's done wrong. They know. So beating it over their head just brings them down. There's no point of really dwelling on it. So what we do instead is we use memories and imagination to build the preferred future of what it looks like after the challenge has been overcome. And so we build off of past, present, and future successes, not their failures. So if they're doing horribly in 2 classes, but pretty well in a couple, we look at the ones that they're doing well in, and we figure out the descriptions, actions, and people involved in those things. So I say DAP there. That's just descriptions, actions, and people, and helping them think about creating a picture, creating an imaginary world, or just creating their memories of what they're good at and proud of to build off of.
So we're going to talk about some of the foundations of solution focus. And the idea is there is a pattern to solution focus, but what's great about it is you don't have to necessarily follow that pattern. You can make it your own. And Joe and I have been in several workshops where we've looked at how people have taken that basic foundation of solution focus and have adapted it and changed it to make it their own and fit with what really what works for them. But the idea is you always start with what is the hope or the desired outcome. So what is it that the client or the student wants from meeting with you? And that's going to basically be your contract. That's going to be the goal that you're working towards. And it comes from them because they're the expert on themselves and they know what it is that works for them. You just have to ask the right questions to draw that out from them. So you start with the hope, and then after that, you start looking at successes. So when are instances or exceptions or times that they've actually had that hope or they've seen that happen? Okay. So if they say, well, I'm hoping to focus more in class, well, what does it mean to focus? What does that look like? Okay. And then talk about times when they were able to focus. What was happening? What allowed them to focus? For instance, a student I'm working with right now, a lot of it was, when there's like some sort of competition or time limit or something like that, that really drives them. And so trying to give them that ability to have those moments to help them rise up to it. And then you start looking into also what is the preferred future. Okay. So, and we'll talk about scaling in a minute, but what would the future look like if they were able to do this? Okay. Who's going to notice what? What's your teacher going to notice? What are your parents going to notice? What are you going to notice in yourself? How is that going to make you feel when you get to that preferred future? And then closing, when you close a session, you want them to watch out for progress, even the smallest little sign, even something small is to be celebrated, because it's those small steps that then lead into something bigger. So you want to celebrate even those small steps. In solution focus, you also have what's called the miracle question. I try to avoid personally the word miracle, especially with middle schoolers, because you tend to get a lot of miracles don't happen. What are you talking about? So a lot of times I would change it more to, okay, say like, next time you go to class, something's different. You're not quite sure what it is, but it's different. Okay. How are you going to know it's different? What is that going to look like? What would you be doing that tells you something different? What would the teacher be doing that tells you that something's different? And so tomorrow question is basically a modified version of that miracle question. So you wake up tomorrow and what's happening, right? Scaling. I'm a huge fan of scales. I love scales. And a lot of times I base my whole conversation around scales with students. And so on a scale of 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, where would you gauge yourself right now? So if we're talking about the focus issue, where would you gauge yourself as how you are with focusing? 0, you can't focus at all. 10, you're focusing all the time. Everything's great. And then where do you put yourself? And the idea is most students are going to rate themselves anywhere probably between a 3 or 6. Okay. So then you start talking about, well, what is it that they're doing well that puts them at that number? Okay. So what are the things that they're doing that puts them at that 3? And then, okay, so we're at a 3. If we were to move up to a 4, what's something that's different that tells you that you've moved up to a 4? What's something new that's happening that tells you you've moved up to that 4? That was a very quick introduction, but we're going to give you all sorts of resources and practice, and it will start to make sense in a minute.
All the foundations that you need to know, Felina and I just hit. And we're going to spend a lot of time practice using those and putting them together differently. I have 2 different templates. We're going to use the other one that you'll see in a second, but we're going to just show you that there are many ways to put this together. Like I use one of 3 different approaches, putting it all together based upon what's presented, and I follow the person. I couldn't do that when I started. I had to go with one style and imitate it. And then after I got that style down, I could then follow different ways of putting it together. So we're going to cover 2 different ways of putting it together right now, and we just want you to choose the one that you think, okay, I'll follow that path, and we'll work it out together. So if you follow a traditional path that's done by a lot of therapists, you do what Felina said. You hit the desired outcome, the best hope. And when they walk in, you even start with, what's your best hope for talking today? After they get to know you and they get to know the terminology, they immediately tell you. And then if they say, you just say, yeah, how can we make it useful? You're here. And just remember that if anyone makes a mistake when they're first starting to use this, they scoot past the best hope too quickly. And they go and they might jump on the first thing the person says. And then they do this whole 15, 20-minute thing. And then they realize towards the end that the kid didn't really want this at all. They just gave you something. So if you're following this format, you do a qualifier, a clarifier. So if they say, I want to do better in class, and say, well, what difference would that make for you? And then if their explanation for the difference aligns with what they said for the best hope, if the difference response totally aligns with the best hope response, you're in. Continue. If it's totally different, and you say, like, say, for example, something that's totally different. I don't want my parents to get divorced. You can't follow that. That's not fair to the kid. But if you say, what difference would that make to you? They say, well, I could spend more time with my dad. And say, well, if we could figure out a way to help you spend more time with your dad in our talk right now, would that be a good use of our time? Yes. Okay, there you go. So sometime what they say for the best hope will be exactly what they want, but other times it won't be. So if you do ask the difference question, it just helps you know. This one, different people do it differently, but they go with this order. After the best hope, they go here. They go to this portion, and this could be what they're good at and proud of, and what they did to get that, the descriptions, actions, and people, and then you learn their strengths, and then you can jump forward. Other people, you can say, you can look at their best hope, they want to do better in class. Well, have you thought of a time, has there been a time recently when you did pretty well in class? Well, yeah. Okay, then you pursue that, and you get the descriptions, actions, and people, you get them to describe it to you. And then you use that information to create your tomorrow question. Felina and I are both biased because we were trained at Brief. And I actually, when I first started rolling around solution-focused brief therapy in 2005, I stopped doing it because of the miracle question. And the miracle question is what it's most famous for, because I kept getting kids telling me, miracles don't happen. And so then I went on a different path. And then Felina actually brought me back to this I was thinking it was only like 5 years ago, but it was like 7 years ago now. So you use it and you just replace the fantasy of miracles with logical progression and say, okay, well, tomorrow when you're this better version of what you want, when you're doing the X, Y, and Z that they just said, what will be the first small signs? And then you loop back and forth to build this preferred future. And like this whole area is the same part. And you just use the information from the strengths, and then you use the tomorrow question as a springboard. And then you spend the whole time, first small signs, who will notice, what will be happening, descriptions, actions, and people, and then you wrap up. Okay, so that's one format where you literally go best hope, exception, successes, preferred future, closing, just like we had before. Now we're going to show you a different path that's just as good.
And where I tend to base everything off of a scale. So I'll start off with the best hope and what the difference will make. But then everything, when I'm talking about exceptions, everything, I always base it off of a scale. And I work around the scale and work using a lot of lists and scales. And that's just my own way that I do it.
And there's another one that we're going to be putting in for my vlog about a third way to do it that we're not going to go into right now, and it's totally built around scaling. So if you really love the scaling, there are other ways that we can get into. This covers the exact same topics, just in a different sequencing. Okay, so if you like the last sequencing and you're like, okay, that's very logical, just do that. We're going to quickly run over a different version and you can use either version you want when you start practicing. Okay. You start off with the best hope, but then after you get that, you don't even go for the difference maker, because a lot of school counselors, you're already going to know why the kid's there. You're already going to know exactly what's happening, and you're going to know what they need. So you don't need to necessarily jump to the difference. So then you take the information from the best hope and you say, well, tomorrow when that's actually happening and the miracle happens, if you want to say miracle or not, whatever, when you say, when that's happening, what's it going to look like? What are the first small signs? And you can tie this to a 10. You can tie this to that scale. But then you ask for the descriptions, actions, and people involved. And then you build that preferred future right after the best hope. And then you say, I bet there are times when you see little bits in this, aren't there? Okay, yeah. Okay, can you tell me when you've seen even a glimpse of that recently? Can you tell me about that? What was happening? And then you build the exceptions more. And then you just say, okay, watch out for success, and we'll talk in a couple weeks. And you don't even do a closing either. So that the closing effectively is, watch out for successes, and we'll talk soon. So those are the two different pathways that we're going to ask you to choose one of them.
Yeah, so everybody's got the downloads. Now what we're going to do is we're going to be going into Oh, we're going to do this first. Let's come back to this. I think we go to the breakout rooms first.
Okay. Now, for the breakout rooms, I'm going to give you a cheat sheet that you can use as well. And I'm going to put it in the chat right now. For this cheat sheet, it just offers some questions that can be used. Yes, Jackie, please. Can you remind the people?
Yeah, so if people are staying in the main space, there are 4 people that were asked to volunteer. I know some new people have joined the room, but if you're one of the 4 people, which also includes me, don't accept yes when Joe invites you to those breakout rooms.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so for the breakout rooms, you're going to have 4 people in each breakout room, and each of you are going to take a different position. One person will be the counselor, okay? And so you should have the note sheet open. That way you have that information to go off of to actually use the solution focus. The other person's going to either be a student, parent, teacher. So you have to decide what role that person is, okay? And the best way to do it is think of a student you work with, or think of a parent you've worked with, or a teacher you've worked with, and try to assume their personality, because that will make it a little bit more real. Then the other person's gonna be the phone a friend. So you're gonna have the cheat sheet open. So if the counselors get stuck, then they can reach out to you and you can assist them on moving forward with the process. You can give them some input or ask a question. And then the other person is just going to kind of take notes and is for feedback for the individuals in the session. So you'll kind of take some notes on things that you notice that they did well, and so that then you can talk about it later.
You're going to go 1 to 4. Don't even introduce yourself. Number off 1 to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't care if you go by who enters the room first, whatever else. And the phone a friend, you're going to be the vital resource. And the note taker, you're the second vital resource, because the person doing it isn't going to be writing down the notes. So when you get in there, if you want the notes, make sure you trade emails with the note taker, and then that they can send you the note document just so you can have it if you really want those.
So I was just going to say, whoever's playing the student, parent, teacher, you think of what the scenario is. So is it anxiety? Is it because they're having a disagreement with a classmate? Is it because of lack of focus or engagement, lack of school success? Is there issues with social media? So whoever is that client, you're going to assume that personality, and you're going to kind of drive it by choosing what the scenario is. Okay. And then you're just going to start. So the counselor will start with the best hope, and then that client is going to drive the conversation. So you're going to decide what that scenario is.
Start with the best hope. And you literally, you might say, but that sounds so hokey. Whatever. It sets the precedent for what will happen in the session. It sets the agenda. If you say, what brings you here today? They're going to start with a complaint. Mm-hmm. If you start with their best hope, they're going to start with what they're hoping to get out of it, and it actually guides the whole conversation. And you might say, well, it's the same question. No, it's not. It has a totally different direction. So please do start with something resembling, what's your best hope for talking today, or how can our chat be useful? Let's go.
All right. Okay. And so all of you agree to be videoed for this. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you want, I'm just saying, yes. I have I think not perfect, but I have an example. I had a session with a student yesterday that I think this approach would really benefit. And if you want, I can be the student, because it's so vividly in my head, like the whole thing, the thing he was talking about, and it's tied to his behavior in class and paying attention, but also a little bit of emotional side as well. So if you want, that's just an example.
Okay, so Namanda, you're going to take the student role. Is anyone desperately wanting to put themselves in the role of counselor?
I'm just observing.
Yeah, great. Fabiola, you're going to actually try. So I don't mind being the phone a friend. Or would Gretchen, you like to be the phone a friend? I'm very open.
I can do that, or the note taking. So the note taking's on the PDF.
So you happy with the recording of that, and I'll be the phone a friend?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, okay, so I guess we start with Fabiola.
Okay, and just to clarify real quickly, at any point I can phone a friend. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it okay if I totally reenact the session? So how he entered the room and
Yep. Yes. And make
Oh
it real.
boy. All right. Hi, Nemahando. I'm so glad you're here. Take your time. Do you want a glass of water? Okay.
no, I just
All right.
I just want to tell you what happened.
Okay. All right. Can I ask you real quick? I'd like to know what would be the best hope that you would like to get out of our time together.
I just talked to the principal.
You just talked to the principal? Is that what you said?
He will contact my parents.
Okay. Right. And what would be the best thing that you would like it out of our time in light of what's happening with him contacting your parents? What would be the best thing that you'd hope to get out of our time together?
Can he not contact my parents? Because my dad would get so angry with me. You know, they are divorced, and then I want him to not to judge me. I want him to be proud of me. I just see him every other weekend. I see him. Please, can the principal not contact him, please?
Okay. Okay. So I hear what you're saying. Sorry, I'm trying to go to the questions. So I'm not quite sure what all you heard. Did you hear that I was trying to ask the first question?
Yes.
Okay.
You were at the point where you were doing some active listening.
Yes. And then, yeah, I'm a little challenged right now because I want to kind of fall into what I'm normally used to doing, but I'm trying to go by the questions. So I'm not quite sure if at this point, like my instinct is to let him speak more and get it out, but I'm not sure if I would just keep going into the solution focused questions.
Yeah. So, or do you want to? Do you want me to?
Phone a friend. Phone a friend.
Okay. Look, I can see that you're really upset right now, and I'd like to. We've not met one another before, and I just want to explain a little bit about what I do and what we can do together. Would that be okay?
Yes.
I can see that something's happened and it's really upset you and you sound really worried. I'm just wondering if we can go back a little bit and perhaps tell me what could have been different. What would have been different for this not to happen where the principal's ringing your parent? Would that be okay if you could maybe go back to what could have been different?
You know, it all started 2 weeks ago, and I know it's also my fault, but it's also a little bit teacher's fault because, you know, sometimes I like to be popular. I want to balance a little bit my academics. I want to balance a little bit like to be popular, and then, you know, sometimes I talk too much, and then teachers get upset, and I got 2 infractions, and then they will contact my parents, but I told them please don't contact my parents, and then they will do it, and then my dad will get angry. But I know it's not my fault, but it's also like teachers' fault. I don't know how to balance it.
Yeah, I hear you there. It sounds like what you really want to do is learn how to balance things. Is that right?
Yes, I want to be good at school, but I want to be popular also. Last year I was more popular, but this year it's very hard. Grade 6 is hard, and I'm not so popular. But I want to do well at school.
Yeah. So you want to do well at school, and you want to be able to balance.
And I want my dad to be proud of me. I want that.
Okay. So if we went back, is it okay if we go forward then? If we think about not today, but if we think about tomorrow, next week, or next month, what would be the best hope for you if you were to feel more secure, more confident, more happier than you are today? What would you hope for yourself?
Well, I think I want to make some comments in class, but not maybe so many comments. So I want everyone to laugh, but maybe not so many. And maybe, if I can sometimes not talk too much to my friends, maybe that will be good.
Okay, so it sounds like you've got some really good ideas there about how you'd like things to be different. What would that mean for you if you could do that? If you could dial down your contributions a little bit?
But like I'm very impulsive, like it's always been the case. And sometimes in past I had some behavior problems, and then teachers said that I'm impulsive, so I don't know if I can control it. It's just the way I am. I can't control it. I just have to talk. I just have to do these things. But then the teachers, they get angry with me. I don't want them to contact my parents again. Like my dad will be so angry.
It sounds like I'm going to be passing this back. I'm going to be dialing my friend over there in Bangkok.
I would just add one thing in there. We haven't talked about taking problem talk and redirecting it, but when Nemanja said I would not be doing this, one thing I would say is, well, what would you be doing instead? It's because you want to always try to gain it back more towards the positive. So we want to avoid that. I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to, do these things. Okay. So if you're not talking, what are you going to be doing instead? Because you want them to start thinking about that preferred future and what does it look like? Or if they say, well, I'm going to be respectful. Well, what does that look like? What does it mean to be respectful? And you want them to really delve deep into those. And so it's the idea of asking those questions to draw up that deep understanding. Okay, so back to
Thank you, Jackie. That was great, actually. You have such a great voice for it, so calming. But what I was going to say is that I was going to now look at exceptions because he made a comment, but should I first maybe dive a little more into what you would be doing and then look at exceptions?
I think it could be a mix. It's not like it has to, it's not, a lot of people tend to think of solution focus as linear, but it's not. You're kind of coming in and out. So if you think of it as like a museum, right? You don't just stay in one room and go to the next room. A lot of times you'll go back and forth between the rooms. It's the same thing. Okay,
sounds good. Okay, so and am I saying your name right? Nemanja?
Nemanja.
Nemanja.
Right.
Nemanja. Okay, great. So Nemanja, thank you so much for sharing all of this with me. It helps me understand what's happening for you. I have a question. I am wondering if you've had moments where you have been able to not get distracted and not talk so much to control that.
Yes, I did. On the school bus, sometimes I like to make some jokes, and some people say those jokes are dark jokes, dark humor, and there was some younger students who were hurt, and then the teacher got upset, and she told me not to do this anymore, and I stopped doing this. So I did. I could do it, but this teacher wanted to contact my parents, and I asked her not to contact them because I don't want them to be disappointed.
Okay. All right. I can understand what you're saying, that you don't want your parents to be disappointed. But
They got divorced when I was 5, so.
Okay. I can see that that is really painful for you. Thank you for letting me know. Can I ask you again about when you've seen, because you said in that example that you had moments and you were talking about being able to give these jokes, and that these were moments for you when you were not as distracted. Is that correct? I'm trying to remember what that example you gave me.
I could stop saying these jokes, even though that I don't think they're so bad jokes, but some people think they're dark humor, and I understand they think it's dark humor, but I like it. For me, that's funny, but I could stop saying these jokes for some time in school.
I see. So you're giving me an example of when you've been able to control it, when you've been able to shift and say, okay, I'm not going to do those jokes right now. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So
I like those jokes. They're really not so, it's not bad. It's just a little bit dark humor, something about death, but it's not that bad. I really like those jokes. I don't understand why people think they're not good.
Right. And some people do, right? Some people like darker jokes, and then other people don't. And it's good to know the difference. It's good to know when those jokes might be okay and when those jokes may not be okay. And it sounds like you have had moments where you've known, okay, the teacher said, let's not do that. And I'm able not to do that. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, because she said those students are 4th graders and 2nd graders, and it's not good for them to hear those jokes. So, I mean, I understand, but I still think those are good.
And you were able to stop. So that's pretty great. You were able to listen to what the teacher's feedback was, and you were able to stop, for that time. Do you remember what that felt like for you in that moment, to be able to just switch gears and do what the teacher asked?
Yeah, it was good because she promised that she will not contact my parents. So it was good because I knew that she will not email them. So that's good.
Okay. So I can hear that you're very concerned about your parents hearing this. Okay. Let's see. I want to do a scaling. Oh, yes. Go ahead, Jackie.
Can I just say something? Because now at this point, I'd be really struggling because I'd have my safeguarding well-being hat on, and I'd be curious about what these jokes are. And he's hinting, and obviously we're hearing about parents being very disappointed in him. And I would kind of probably move that way, because I'd be thinking, is there, racist joke? Is there a sexist joke? Is there something around self-harm or suicide type death jokes? So I'm curious about, at this point.
I checked. It was dark humor. It was just like about death and this kind of, but not like
But safeguarding would take priority. So if something comes up with safeguarding, because I know I'm safeguarding lead as well, it's okay to ask, well, can you tell me a little bit more about that? And try to get, your dad's going to be upset. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? But and then based on what's said, depends on whether or not you go the safeguarding route or if you continue with the solution focus. Safeguarding is also going to take priority.
That's why I chose this case, because it's very safe. It's more about his feeling if he doesn't want to disappoint his dad. There's no consequence, nice parents. And also it was just like some jokes about, I don't know, skeletons or something like this, like nothing like too, but just like wasn't appropriate for younger kids to hear that, like Halloween-y jokes kind of,
But I also understand what Jackie's saying, because I can feel the dilemma within myself as well, that I just want to, I feel like it's very easy for me to want to just talk about other things or let him express those emotions a little longer. I would probably stay there a little longer with the student. But I think because we're being videoed and because we've got a little bit of a goal, I feel this a bit of pressure of, okay, I need to ask one of the questions, or I need to move this along a little bit towards that.
It's about balancing the solution focus with your other counseling training. So like if he came to me and he's crying, I would first let's just talk and get to know each other and get him to calm down first. Yeah. So you can spend time, what are some of the things that you do enjoy, and spend time just really getting to know that person and getting them to calm down first, and then move into the solution focus. Yeah. Because if somebody's very elevated emotionally, it's going to be very hard to steer them that route.
Yeah. I have to say, he's a really good actor, by the way.
Yes, very good. Thank you.
No, but it was really like this, because he went, what I tried to do is, a little bit, of course, talking about, get all the information about the divorce and everything. And then we would switch back to, let's say, let's being proactive, what we can do. But he will go back and give me another example. Oh, but when I was 5, I remember, so it was hard to, and I think that's in reality, that's how it goes. It's not, in the end, actually, I didn't use the solution focus, like the model, but we came up with he said he would like to do like self-reflection sheet with goals that he can every day fill out, and then like write, and then next week we'll come back and because he's motivated, and I said, do you need any like prize or something? He's like, no, I want to do it, I want to get better, so my parents are proud of me. So it was just about like using, that's why I think this approach is good for this case. It's not like not a big like emotional concern or something, but
I think what I saw as well with Fabiola is the humanistic and the Sfbt, and as I think we're coming back, but it's that lovely balance maybe between both.
Yeah, and that's where it's taking the solution focused practice and making it your own, and making it fit with your style, and kind of working around it. Like a lot of times I won't do a whole session in one sitting. I'll meet with a kid and talk about something, and now like one kid I met with yesterday, and then I sent him off to go and think about something so that he could come back and we could talk about that. So yeah, we're all back in the main room. So let's just quickly review a little bit, because I know we're running short on time. And so this is basically kind of like a solution focused review. So what was your hope with the practice? What went well? Anybody want to share any ideas on that? What were you hoping to get out of it, and what did you feel went well?
I would also like the note takers. If you had any observations that you thought that popped up, if you could throw it in the chat or speak. There were only 2 note takers, so the note takers, you could speak up right now.
Anybody?
Well, one of the things I noticed as a note taker is that, and this is, I believe it was a middle school student situation, which the counselor needed to kind of come back to what is the best hope a couple times. There was a couple iterations, because at first it was something that maybe wasn't going to be, they weren't going to be able to get there. So I have like 3 different kind of, tries at getting the kid to really articulate. Like at first it was the principal, I don't want them to contact my parents. And then it was, I want to have a little more balance in how much I'm talking in class and making jokes. So it took a couple tries. It didn't happen right away. And I think that's maybe to be expected, to try to kind of get at that best hope more than once.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any thoughts to share on your room?
I want to say that for me as a client, what was really good when you engaged me into this like preferred future and how it would look different, then because instead of focusing on the past and sharing all my problems, I was like, okay, how would that like just involving me, like kind of problem solving, like how that will look like. I could see the difference, like qualitative differences, like, okay, like I have to think, how it will look like, and to imagine, like including like fantasy. So that was like a change for me, where I could, kind of calm down and start using like prefrontal cortex, I guess.
Yeah. So we have some comments about from Lori, went well, that the counselor tried different approaches and stayed supportive throughout. And I think that's really important, because this is a mind shift. And sometimes it's very easy to fall back into that negative kind of focusing on the problem. And so you really, as a counselor, it takes a lot of work to stay supportive and kind of keep working through it. We didn't cover in here what to do to avoid negative talk, but maybe we could do up a sheet and connect it to our HUVA a link, because that's important as well. And then Jackie said, Fabiola balanced the use of questions with a humanistic presence. Yes, and it's very important to still be true to yourself. And we talked about the idea that it's not a linear approach, that a lot of times you're kind of moving in and out. When I was trained, one of the trainers compared it to a museum, where you don't necessarily go from one room to another room to another room. Sometimes you kind of go to this room and then you go back to this room and then you go over here, and you're kind of going in and out of it and going in and out of the different segments and kind of slowly working through it. Let's move on, because I know we're running short on time, right? And we want to make sure to share resources. It's really important that you can use this in a lot of different ways. It's not just used for counseling. And actually, I'm working a lot with my school right now on how do we approach solution focus in many ways. And there are schools that are actually built specifically around solution focus, where all the teachers are trained in solution focus, and they have themes and they have all these great things that are going on. So we want to share some of that with you. So the idea when you're with a student, the fallback is always to say, good job, right? But how do we change that and make it more where the student can really internalize what's happening, right? So how did you do that, or how did you manage to do that? Were you pleased with the outcome? How difficult was it, or how much of a challenge was it? And then what resources did you draw from with that challenge to push through and still be able to get it done? So it was really hard for you, but yet we got here, right? So how did you manage to do that? So what did it take for you to do that? What did you learn about yourself with this? What strengths did you draw on, or resources did you draw on? And you can always add depth by adding then that question, what else, what else, what else? The training that Joe and I did, I can remember one of the first practice sessions we had to do, we had to make a list of qualities about ourselves. And they started off with 5. And then they're like, okay, well, what else? What else? What else? And we had to keep going until we came up with 50 things. And I was just like, I don't know and it's amazing how when you do that, how much a person can actually come up with when you're really kind of pushing them and guiding them for that. I didn't think I could come up with 50, but I managed to.
Felina just hit something I want to piggyback on. There are 2 things that when you're struggling and new that you must use. Okay, if it's negative, say, what do you want instead? And if it's positive, say, what else? Okay, like those, as you're starting to use this, those are the 2 things that everybody needs to use all the time.
Okay, so we want to share some other things with you. So this is some of our forms and that we've used in different areas of the school. At my previous school, I set up a whole counseling program based off of solution focus. So anytime there was a referral to me, the questionnaire was solution focused. Anytime I met with a parent, it was solution focused questions that I asked. When I got feedback after meeting with the student, it was solution focused. I've used it, we've both used it with mediations with students, but also with coworkers. There's times when coworkers have had hard times collaborating together. So I've been asked to pull them into a room. And so I use a solution focused questioning with that. My 6th grade, I've taken the wellness wheel and I use that as a solution focused scaling. And so they pick something that their goal or what they want to work on. And then at different times throughout the year, they rate themselves on that wheel. And then they talk about why are they there and what's going well and how are they going to move up. Yeah, there's lots of resources there for you. So we're going to share this presentation. You're welcome to look at any of it, use any of it. And like I said, I'm working right now with my school a lot on this. In fact, I'm presenting at our middle school faculty, giving them a little teaser today about solution focus. And then we're during our PD day, myself and one of the assistant principal who has taken the training as well, we're going to do a whole solution focus session with teachers and how they can use this in their classroom. And so if anybody wants that presentation or wants that information, send me an email and I'll gladly share it with you.
The last 2 things on there, if you're a techie, if you like, I was able to reinvent our student concerns process into a student success process. And there's a sample Google site that you could peek through, that even has sample forms that teachers would be submitting their stuff with. And it's similar to a lot of the other links here. It's just all in a tech-based situation that you can use it if you like it. Just peek over it, and all of these are really great for just reflection upon what you're doing. They're just compare to what you're doing and say, what could we tweak? What could we use? And then the SFW, that's the Solution Focus World Templates and Resources. The templates that we showed the demo on earlier, there were 2 different ones. They're both in there. And there are other things too. So if you want to, we realized that this might be too much on one slide, but we didn't want to have 10 more slides because we knew we wouldn't have time to explain it all.
And then we've also linked in here some great books that we've both have used and looked at. So Solution Practice in Schools. This is one that really has a lot of strategies and stuff that it's this one right here. So it has a bunch of strategies that people can use within a school setting, within a classroom setting, 5-minute conversations, little guidelines. So this one's a really great book here. Anything by Linda Metcalf. Linda Metcalf has a lot of stuff about the solution-focused school climate, but she also has some great books that she's used in her courses on how to parent with solution focus, coach with solution focus, teach with solution focus. The solution focus approach with children and young people. That's a book that
Let me talk about that one, Felina. And I can't make Felina plug her own book. She has a chapter that she wrote in the 3rd one. And it was put together by Denise Youssef. It's a compilation of vignettes and little stories by practitioners. And Felina is the author of one of the chapters.
Yeah, and so it has just a bunch of resources, a bunch of ways that different people are using it, not just within schools, but in other areas. That's the Solution Focused School Climate by Linda Metcalf. And then she also has one about RTI and how to approach RTI, response to intervention, with solution focus as well. So those are some great resources there if you're interested in any of those. And then...
And for this page, the Solution Focused Schools Unlimited, that is the organization that Linda Metcalf actually runs. And Felina and I did a presentation for their conference a couple weeks ago. And for her website, she has she has additional free resources. Like you go to the resource page, yeah, she has like 6 or 7 books that she has listed, and you have to buy those. But she has a ton of free resources and a ton of webinars. She has tons of free stuff. And then Brief, that's the organization that trained both Felina and me. And Elliot Connie, I did some other PD with his stuff. And the Solution Focus Brief Therapy Play-by-Play, it has a bunch of live sessions, and you can see him do it. And it's really interesting to watch other people do it. Watching another person do it is very powerful.
Yeah. And for the Solution Focused Schools Unlimited, I think it's quite reasonable. I think if you sign up for the year, it's maybe $100, but she will actually every Monday send out some sort of solution focused resource for advisory lessons, for parent conversations, for something like that. So then she sends you a resource every Monday. And then every other week on Wednesday, she has a webinar that comes with your membership that you can sign up to attend. And if you can't attend it, then she posts it so you can actually watch the video of it later. So it's just chock full of resources on ways to use it. So we have thrown a lot at you, a lot of information. I'm available at any time. If somebody ever wants to talk, we can do a private Zoom call. If you have questions, if you want more information on things and stuff, you're welcome to reach out to me. And I'm sure it's the same for Joe as well. He'll gladly accept any emails from you also. Like I said, we're not experts, but we've been doing it a while. We play with it and tweak it, and we're constantly reviewing and changing and shifting things. So I believe we have probably 10, 15 minutes, about 12 minutes left. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. If there's any questions, any comments, anything that anybody has. Yes.
Hi. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I think most of us counselors are moving towards solution focus, but it is I find it quite challenging because it really requires me to learn some of the questioning styles, which I'm not quite used to. So I just want to ask, have you noticed whether SFBT works well with a certain age group?
I've used it with a variety of age groups. So before at my old school, I did elementary as well. And so I used it with elementary, but the idea with elementary is to make it as interactive and as visual as possible. So I actually had this sticky Velcro scale on my wall with these little people that they had to move around on there. We had a sensory path. And so as we're going through the questions and stuff, we're jumping on the sensory path and we're talking about it. And so, and then we would also create like little booklets and things like that. So making it very visual and very interactive, using a lot of role play, even within the solution focus for the little ones, it works quite well.
Yeah, for the younger they are, the more they need to show you. And say, if they say something, well, what does that look like? And like, could you show me? And then you could act it out together. And a lot of people who work with little kids use skill cards or strength cards, and then you could have them even pick out the card and describe what it looks like when they're doing that thing. Or if they have a skill that they need, they pick that card and say, well, what does that look like? And then you're still building on the successes and having them build the preferred future that they want. And so the younger they are, the less talk you can use, but you can still do it. You can do talk-based stuff 10 and up, no problem. And 10 and down, 9 and down, it just has to be more interactive.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say even if you have a student who's not necessarily responding a lot to the questions, you can still just keep kind of talking to them. You still keep asking them, because even if they're not responding, they're still taking it in and they're still thinking about it. And so you're just laying that framework out and you're trying to adjust their thinking. And eventually they'll get to the point where they're going to get tired of you asking questions and they're going to say something, but you just keep going with the process and stay calm. But it is a mind shift. It takes a lot of practice.
Thank you, Lance, for pointing out Ben Furman's Kid Skills resources and app. It's all based on doing this with younger kids. Thank you for pointing that out. Sarah, who was doing the modeling in the other group earlier, she kept it's normal to want to fall back with what you know. If you ever taught, when you get hit stress, you do whatever your teachers did. And if all of us, like the guys at Brief, they tell us sometimes it's easier to train people who know nothing because they have less to unlearn. So just know that the only way to do it is to start doing it. So I would recommend picking one of the templates. And the templates aren't magical. You can create your own template. Like half the time I don't even use them. I have a little whiteboard and I just sketch it out. And but as I was starting, I needed to follow a template because I would fall back into my choice theory approach that I used to follow. And then I would find myself following problem talk again. And so the only way I could really get myself to do it was have a template that I have my template on my iPad, and I pull open the iPad and I just write directly on it, and then I can export it to the kid. If I do it on the whiteboard, I just snap a picture and I send it to them, and then they have their own record, and you don't need to update your own records because you can just add that to the file for your records. So that kills two birds with one stone.
And when I first started, I actually created a cheat sheet of questions. So this is best hope questions. These are, exception questions. This is instances questions. So I always had that off to the side. So if I got nervous, I could always kind of look over and find some other question to then go from. And I think that's linked in the presentation as well.
Oh, is it? Okay. That's good.
Actually, that's the one that we shared earlier in the chat as well.
Jackie's trying to.
Did you?
Thank you. Felina and Joe, we've got about just 3 minutes left. And I was just wondering, if you were to condense everything that you've learned in your practice and experience of SFBT, what do you think is the most important outcome for young people by using it? What would you say is, if you could distill it right down?
I would say, for me, what I've noticed with using it with young people is they feel more in control. And anytime we can give them more control back, you know, they're used to adults telling them what to do, right? And they get to that point where you're telling them what to do, so that it's like Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, 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 wah. And so I feel anytime you can give a student back control, whether it's in counseling or safeguarding issues or anything, anytime you can give them some sense of control, it helps them to own it, and then they internalize it. And so with using it, I've noticed they feel more in control of the situation. They feel like it's coming from them. And then personally, I would say for me, it's been a lifesaver for me, because, you know, when you talk about problems, it drains. I say it's like soul sucking. It sucks the soul right out of you. And so for me, it's kind of refreshed me. And so it's really changed the dynamic and the relationships that I can have with certain students.
So to go with both sides, hope for both us, the users, and them, the recipients. Because if we build on hope, they think they can do it because they've done it. And they're building on their own successes, and they can imagine doing it again. And for us, we're not rolling around in people's muck all day long. I was fried when I started doing this. I was really starting to think about getting out of counseling, because like I would go home and some days my wife would start. I'm like, I just can't hear anymore. I can't. And I'm like, that doesn't happen anymore. It's like, when you roll around in people's successes, it's rewarding and it's hope building for everybody.
Well, I mean, I don't know how that left others feeling, but I think right now for all of us in COVID times especially, that's something that we all need, is how do we refresh ourselves and keep optimistic? So that sounds incredibly helpful for us to recenter our practice by using this.
You're welcome, Joe, for me reintroducing it to you.
And hopefully, yes, and thank you, Felina, and thank you for you guys for sticking. We like to roll around in this, and like Felina said, if anyone has any questions, if you just want to do like a quick side chat, we could set up a different Zoom. Just let us know and float us an email. We'll figure out a way to help you out as much as you want. And again, even if we don't have the answers for everything, but we can tell you maybe where to look, and what helped us,
and how we learned from our mistakes. So.
Yeah.